All right. So this is actually what I commonly refer to as speed painting. Using one kind of solid brush, keeping it pretty refined, and just really attacking with it. And it's important to keep a kind of energy and an idea of speed painting, like rushing it a little bit, so that you don't avoid parts that just aren't very interesting. So otherwise you'll just stay focused on faces or eyes and not get around to things like the groin, where the shadow is pretty complicated and I have to try to get that right. Now, I don't have all the reference, so I'm going to be doing some free painting here, and you're definitely allowed to do that. The reason I want you to do an animal head to toe is I want you to have to kind of learn from your reference and then build up from it. So I'm going to go over here and see what I have from the front. And I see those kind of hooves, and I see the shape. And so I'm going to paint those up, kind of speed paint those up on my little pygmy guy. Slightly different proportions, remember, because I warped it right from the basic shapes up. I have to refine my silhouette here a little bit. And notice this whole time I'm staying on the brush tool, and I just have my pointer finger of my left hand hovering over Option to steal colors when I need them. And if I need to move around, I hit the space bar, or I hit Command plus to zoom in, but I'm always staying on the brush tool. But if you want to erase and kind of carve out your outline, you'll need to go to the eraser. And so I don't bother with that. Instead, I kind of outline the new edges that I want as I paint. So I'm trying to build this core shadow. And at the end, I'll erase out these edges. But right now, it's not worth changing tools. And I'd have to go through the background layers as well to erase. So just stay on the brush tool as long as you can.
Why I'm having trouble going on, I can do, how do I explain it? I hit the color change,
The Option, yep.
and can do it on the left side of the face, but it won't affect the right side.
It might be the way your layers are stacked. You might have already painted over on a higher layer. And so my refined paint layer is always, the layer I have unlocked that I'm painting on is always the highest layer, the highest unlocked layer. The only thing over the top of it might be the reference. And very often that's where most of these kind of confusions and mistakes come from in digital painting, is just you're painting on a layer you're not intending to. And that's why I lock all layers except the one I'm painting on.
That's a good appreciation.
Indeed. Now you might find that you want to introduce a new color, and I don't even need to change from the brush tool for that. I have the swatches here, and I'm realizing I don't have many kind of purples, and they might be kind of nice in here. Let me put a little bit of that in, and then I can start stealing from it and working with it, kind of mixing it with the pinks and the oranges, even these little cyans. And it's speed painting, not because I'm trying to, win a game show with how fast I am, but because I'm just always moving, always putting down, and it forces my brain to just react to the decisions I'm making. There's a lot of art theory and a lot of art history about the importance of being kind of spontaneous in your process in order to kind of reveal the things that you're more naturally inclined to in your personal visual vocabulary and aesthetics. That goes for digital painting too. No one as a 3-year-old painting their pure visions at the finger painting table is trying to match a digital painter online, is trying to mimic techniques. You're just trying to have fun, find your own way. And that's how all those great digital painters online, all those great animators, that's why you've come to love them, because they figured out their own way of enjoying the process. As one illustrator put it to me recently, it's pointless to try to paint like anyone else because they're going to do it better for cheaper because they enjoy it. And if you're just trying to copy it, you're just going to drive yourself nuts. If you're going to be in a creative field where it's hard to make enough money anyway, you might as well be true to yourself and enjoy it. But if I slow down too much and I try to, paint a certain way in a certain area, and I get overly judgmental of my abilities, that's just not going to help me. So that's why speed paint. Keep going quick. Work as much of the painting at one time as you can. Don't obsess over just one small area. And I like to throw myself hiccups all the time. I'm going to put some deep red in here. And I've been ignoring this leg. Let me get in there. And the whole reason I had to get to the legs is so I can learn how to paint these feet. I'm going to make my little pygmy deer's feet a little bit bigger, but I want that general shape. That cloven hoof shape. And we definitely paint things better the more we observe them, the more we know them. So for instance, I'm going to be painting a project that has this character a lot. There are a lot of things I could do. I could go to the zoo and really sketch from similar animals to get more familiar. A technique that's also really helpful that most two-dimensional artists don't think of is to try sculpting it. Sculpting it will really give you a familiarity with the forms, so you'll be more confident. Doing something for the first time is always the most difficult. I think I do a lot of deer in these demos recently because I have them in my neighborhood. And they're kind of weird animals. They're hard to envision. I don't feel like I could paint one from memory yet or draw one accurately. It's just good to observe different types. So every once in a while, glance over at your navigator and see what all this work you're doing is producing from a distance. And that should encourage you. You are making progress, even though it feels like mowing the same grass over and over and over again. All right. Now, sometimes you slow down just enough to model form. So I have to kind of get the shape of this foot right. That'll be enough to kind of tell me how it works. And then I want to do it over here. Paint the highlights in. A little bit of color. I'm still at about 70%. I hope to get to where I can show you some high finishing techniques, but that comes after this. Now, what's nice about having the reference open is then within your same canvas still, even though you have it here, is that you can see it then in the navigator and you can see kind of where the values are different. So I can see that I can knock this leg a little bit darker, and that will help. Same thing with this, I can move this a little bit darker, and that will help. And so when you're choosing colors, mostly I'm choosing them for their value at this point, just trying to model the form. Red is a nice dark valued color. That's a big difference there. And then sometimes I like to just turn off the underpainting and see what's left, you know, with gray underneath. So yeah, you can see how that custom brush, it's a lot more work, but all of that movement, that gives me something that's much more believable. And that's kind of what I'm wanting. I'm wanting this little plush, weird looking deer. All right. So now I have to go to these back legs and free paint, learning from my front ones, the hooves. And then I think I'm going to free paint some antlers and then work on the head. So there we go. That's kind of the shape of that hoof. I'm going to build up a little bit more around the ankle. And at 70%, to get it darker, you just have to overlap it a few times. This back hoof at that angle, it's similar to this one. Show the bottom edge a little bit. Show the split. Some of that purple. And notice I'm not being too careful about the color I choose. I'm just trying to adapt, react to it. Because even in just brown fur, there are hundreds and hundreds of colors that you can make use of. And then if you push your painting more abstracted, more expressionist, I'm a big fan of the German expressionists. Blau Reiter School, Kandinsky, Franz Marc, they really pushed color. They believed it had a lot of psychological, kind of communicative and even spiritual effects on their viewers. It helps me not to be afraid of color. It can be found in everything. Now, in past semesters, I would even have a reference of something like a Kandinsky over here, or Franz Marc painting. Let me save quick. Because remember, we don't need to just work from photographs in our digital painting. We can stylize this. Now, I'm not going for a Franz Marc kind of look, but I might be able to make use of some of his bold color. So he's well known for his painting of animals. Very stylized, right? Here we have some nice deer. But look at this beautiful black fox, blue-black fox. Those are some nice color relationships I can learn from. So if I steal that and I open that with Photoshop, check this out. I can move it over to this box, right? And then I can click on my first one, say window or range, and then this is my favorite setup, 3 upstack.